I think that the invitation I want to give to everybody is there's a truism that is what is true for one is true for all. So what I'd like to do is to invite everybody to see where does my story resonate with your lives and your story. It's not singular to me. I think something is happening to all of us. When I first got involved in mystical spirituality, and I left LSD behind and got involved with my guru, where I had a very profound experience that made it clear to me this was someone I was supposed to be with. I had had come off a very distressing experience where I spent a year underground from the Army, and I had severe PTSD. And so, although I meditated every day, twice a day for 20 years, I couldn't feel anything. And what saved me was that God, through the guru, started coming to me in these profound dreams. And I would wake up in ecstasy and bliss from divine presence. And this compensated for the lack of ability to connect in the waking life, and anchored in me this very powerful reality that, there was something really powerful going on. It's like, the closest I can say is if you look at Jacob's dream in the Bible, it was like that. Although I don't know if Jacob woke him to bliss, didn't say. And so for a long time, I kind of felt this mystical connection. But if someone said to me, "Are you intuitive? Are you psychic?" No, not me. That's not me. I don't have that. Other people do that. I don't do that. 1992, the 90s was a seminal decade. In 1992, I had a number of very powerful experiences. One with a female guru who I spent only 20 minutes with, but she was so powerful, she knocked me out for 6 weeks. And things that had been blocking and calcified began to dissolve. And all of a sudden, I could feel I was reaching places I couldn't reach before. In 1995, Gary Culp at Pebble was so enamored of Conversations with God, which is an extraordinary book, or a group of books, that he had us at the summer camp in the Adirondacks practice. We're doing our own conversation with God. And what I found when I came back is I had some ability when I would do writing that something would open up and wisdom would come through, and I would step back into a space that seemed to be a wisdom space and a perspective space that wasn't part of my normal waking consciousness. And writing, therefore, became a very prime method for me to connect to my guides. And I was excited, that everything, because real stuff was coming through. Sometimes I write something like would emphasize itself, and it was amazing to feel what was happening. And these were the first breakthroughs they really had, where all of a sudden I was starting to really connect to my intuitive self. So my vision of what I wasn't correct. In 2006, I spent a week with James von Prague in Omega Institute and other mediums, because I had decided that I was going to do readings for people, and I started to open up that space in myself. And so I've done probably about 50 or 60 literally professional medium sessions in my life where I've had about 80 to 90% accuracy in getting information from people. So there have been these periods of leaps. And the reason, I can't lean on it. The reason I felt inspired to give this talk was over the last 6 months to a year, I've been feeling a very, very powerful acceleration. And it started to show up in a few major ways. The first thing I noticed was things that I had been, things that didn't make sense to me, or things that had not been in my worldview. All of a sudden, I really had a much greater understanding of than I did even 2 or 3 years ago, much less 5 or 10 years ago. That my sophistication, understanding certain metaphysical concepts, in kind of coalescing everything I learned in my life, which is very, very clear in ways that had not been clear before. Also, I noticed was very interesting is that my thought processes, if I was writing, words would come to me, like I would be writing and a more precision would happen in my writing, and thoughts would come that were more precise, but I wasn't thinking like I had to have this thought. They were just arising. I'm sitting there watching this process. That's interesting. As I'm watching this flow happen as I'm doing this stuff. So Stan Troy, who spoke here about, I'm sorry, Stan Troy,
there is,
and I'll just step back right. Stan Troy, who, let's move this up a little bit.
no, it's just, yeah,
he did a life path reading for me. And everything that I've been feeling about something was happening to me of really moving into a new level of something different inside myself was happening. And he pinpointed it because he said, your role in life is to be the elder visionary. And you see patterns where other people don't see patterns. And it was kind of this whole thing, like your role in life is to kind of share with people this broader perspective. And I felt that therefore I was arriving at something in myself that I'd waited a very long time to arrive for. So that was the first thing that happened. The second thing was that I started noticing about a year ago that it became more normal for me to get downloads. I would get, I'd be talking to people and then I could feel a download coming. I could feel a communication happening. So I would say to people, I'm getting something's going to pass it through. I've had this happen for quite a while, but now it's happening with a lot more frequency. And now all of a sudden, I was also getting major down. So, there are a number of really major pieces that would come to me. So there's clearly this tuning in and this expansion of self. It's not that there's something outside of me that I'm hearing into. There's a me, that is a greater part of me that I am growing into. And Paul called this, Mihail called this, who Paul channels, the blended state. That we were not, sometimes we have peak experiences where we are totally in what, for want of a better word, would be the God self, the higher self, higher perspective, so whatever. And other times we're in our regular personality, ego, running around. But then there's the blended state, where it's neither one or the other, but it's a blend, where we're allowing the kind of union with that to happen. And I began to see that that's been happening a lot more. And it's different. It's different than the way it was before. And the third thing I noticed is that I felt a much greater sense of spaciousness when I chose to enter into the space. I had a very interesting experience just a few days ago that really kind of made this very clear. I was really in a bad mood. I was really having a hard time. Now, this part of what I'll talk about in a second. And I got brought on my pad to write. And I said, what's going on here? What's the point of all this? If I'm feeling lousy like this, what's the point of all this? I was really, and all of a sudden, as I was writing, things began to open up. And what I noticed was, if I was 10, 15 years ago, the space would be like this. It would be there, but it would be kind of contained. Now it's like this. And there was this energy moving through as I'm writing, and there was this wisdom and like this, and it just rebalanced me completely to make this connection. And the message was very much, and this is a message that constantly has been there. I did workshops on this called kind of knowing who you are in the spiritual path. That oftentimes the soul is ahead of the mind. And we have internalized much more than we think we have. We still think of ourselves over here, when in reality we're over here. And we haven't caught up. And so what I noticed was you do this work for like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And you cultivate, and you open spaces that sometimes you don't realize you've opened. Until all of a sudden you meet yourself on the road. Not the Buddha on the road, you meet yourself on the road. And one of the things I came to understand very about in this period, but for the last 2 years, I am not on a path. I am my path. Everybody here, you're not on a spiritual path. You're not seeking something. You are your path. And the message of this kind of is that what I learned at Pebble a long time ago, 80% of life is showing up. And when you step into a space and give it an opportunity, the space within is there. And this happens in channeling a lot. I remember with Gary Schoenberg when he was channeling a lot. He could be in a really bad mood. But the minute he stepped into that space, it all happened. It had nothing to do with this. You know, once you're willing to step into the space, so part of the invitation is that what space do you have within yourself that you haven't acknowledged as much, and that you can step into anytime you want. And it's particularly true with groups. If you're with group meditations, or it's just you may start noticing that whatever view we have of ourselves is not necessarily what is really going on. That's what Byron Katie talked about. Is it true? First question you ask yourself is it true? How I see myself, how I see this. And the second question is, how do I know it's true? And so oftentimes we carry a vision of ourselves or a thought or of who and what we are. And but it may have nothing to do. And I think in the end, what I'm feeling is that all my life, I wanted to arrive and find something in myself that I knew was missing. And all of a sudden, I'm finding that that day has come. That who Ken Kaplan is, who Kenny Kaplan was, is I'm finally meeting that person without obstruction, without major obstruction. I had a very powerful experience with the entities meditation about 2 weeks ago, which we do with Casa Dominacion. And it's now called St. Rita's entities. And as we're doing this, we open up a space, 3 people. So this speaks to it. We open up this space, and 3 people create this incredibly powerful vortex to open up. It's amazing. Every time. The meditations are exceptionally powerful and blissful and sweet. And all of a sudden, I felt my father's presence. It was overwhelming because he was right. No, I was there. He was merging into my body. And I could feel he was doing something to release some stuff that he had put there when he was living. And it overwhelmed me for like 10 minutes. I had never felt his presence so strongly. And, these are the kind of things that are happening that would never have happened 10 years ago. And that meditation is like a template that meditation doesn't happen by accident. There are 3 people who've done really powerful spiritual work for decades. And when they sit down together, like here, and have an intention to open up space, the matrix in our bodies, in our being, that we have cultivated to open up, creates this space for the power of that meditation to happen. It's not like, I'm just a schlup here, and the God's over there, and it's all the angels. No, it's a co-creative process. And so the more, if we start paying attention to how much power we really have and can express and are expressing. Then we see that like it's an amazing thing. Because I said the other night we did, and I said, look, it was exceptionally powerful meditation. It was incredibly peaceful. And I said, look, this is 3 people. It's not 100 people. It's 3 people. And like I said, so I feel that I'm finally arriving to who I've always wanted to be, not obstructed by my neuroses, and not that I don't have them, because one of the things I want to say is, as this acceleration is happening, and one other thing I want to mention, if one of the ways I see it mirrored back to me is on social media. The level of sophistication I'm seeing of spiritual posts on social media is way, way, way beyond where they were 5 years ago. I mean, there are things going on. There are things that people have internalized about. I gave a talk on non-duality 4 months ago. And non-duality means that we are not separate from God. We don't have to earn eternal life. We don't have to earn God's grace. We don't have to earn, that's not the way it works. We always were aspects of God or identical with God. We always will be. We always are now. We are in eternal life right now. It's just masked by the illusion of Maya. And so I'm finding that the spiritual posts that I see on Facebook and Instagram is constantly at a very, very sophisticated level. There are non-duality posts that you would never have seen 5 years ago because of the sophistication of it. That's as sophisticated that anything that any Eastern guru could write are coming from quote unquote ordinary people. It's really amazing. So it's happening in everybody. There's a movement happening. I can't speak to how things are going to work in terms of this ascension. I don't think like that. I like to be here now. But the one thing I can say for certain is I know that the spirit is moving through me at a very I can't deny that. I can't deny it happening here. I remember when I said to you, and I remember when I said to you. I remember when you first came here, and then about 5 years ago when I saw you speaking, I said, where'd this guy come from? Because what was coming out of Mike was amazing. I'm sure he's been through the same process. And I saw you when you start doing echoes of love. All of a sudden Susan starts, and so it did, from the Gospel of John, Jesus says, the works I do, you shall do greater. I'm seeing it. I mean, I work with Sam Shelley, and he also people with cancer. He does amazing things. But one of the things about this whole thing, acceleration, it's not always a walk in the park. There's a lot of shadow stuff coming in. It can be very wrenching. It's not always like, this goes back to what Jet was talking about. What is freedom? Is freedom always feeling good all the time? No. Freedom is seeing reality and truth no matter what you're going through and what circumstances are. And so I noticed that the butterfly has a life or death struggle to escape the chrysalis. And oftentimes I feel like that. It can be, certainly what's going on in terms of the world, I get post-traumatic shocks from what, it's just me, this is what Trump has done. When he invaded Iran, when he went to start, it was a huge PTSD shock for me. This latest Supreme Court decision was a PTSD shock for me. For others, it might not be. For me, it was. So the world itself, we're going through a lot. And awakening can be wrenching as we let go of other things. I don't fully recognize this guy here and yet this I know is the person I always wanted to be. The last piece I'll leave you with is that what we call soul is technically called the psychic being, or in Jivatman in Hindu, in Sanskrit. So this is my take on things. I've done a lot of work with non-dualists where there's either the body here or the infinite absolute here. There's no in between. And for me, I can't, that doesn't resonate for me. There is a whole technology, what we call the relative reality, which is this universe for us, where there's laws and rules and all kinds of stuff going on. And part of that is, to me, there is something called a soul, which is the psychic being. There is a part of us that is not solely created by conditions or circumstances in this life, or are bound to the lives and our contracts of our bodies, our intellects and stuff for this life. There's a deeper part of us. There's like an imprint in the cosmos that carries a unique and distinct imprint that survives life after life after life. And that's like that might be much more expansive than what we see in terms of the singular bodies here. I don't know. That's my sense of it. But there's an imprint, there's a signature that each one of us has. That I think every creature and being has. And that's the essence of who we are as a soul. And of course, the fullness of us as the soul merges is with the truth of our being, which is absolute beyond qualities. But we're not there yet. And I felt so strongly, it's the reason why each of us is a flower in the garden. What I've seen from all the speakers I've gotten over the years, there's about 400 different speakers over the last 8 years or so. Every single one of them's journey is the same, but unique. In terms of the fact they have the intersection with spirit, it became real, and then they started to flower. And as they start to flower, their unique life stream or gifts, their imprint, their psychic being, in terms of what they were meant to do in this life and how their energetic imprint was supposed to be manifest in the world, apart from every other manifest imprint, begin to take shape and form. Most of the people we get are practitioners. And so that they're really established, and you can see it. And this is a process that seems to be going on and on and on with everybody. And I came to realize that what I'm connecting to is the imprint of my soul, of who is the essence of me as a loving being connected to all of this. Also, being more than just a drop of the ocean. As Rumi said, you are not a drop in the ocean. You're the entire ocean contained in a drop. And so these two things interplay, the blended state and the psychic, the soul part of ourselves, that which sustains itself and grows through evolution, life after life after life, which gives meaning and purpose to what we're doing here. It's not just all suffering and it's all around. No. It's brilliantly constructed. It's brilliantly and dazzlingly constructed. And the beauty of this path is that it shows us that we all have purpose and meaning. Every person has meaning. And I think Jesus pointed to that one of the great things about Christianity, or what he taught, was that everybody had value in terms of their relationship to God. It wasn't the elites, and it wasn't the priests. Everybody. He was dealing with the peasants. Everybody had value. Now, he didn't articulate in this way because I think he felt that they wouldn't have been able to understand the higher levels. So
I have a responsibility.
I'm about finished. So, but I think in this age, I'll leave you with a thought. The very first, not the first, but the second, but one of the great first things that ever told to me about myself in 1970. I hitchhiked all the way to Colorado from California. It was an amazing thing I did that by myself. So with another guy, and we split up. And we were going to see a woman who was a very powerful psychic person. And I walk in and she looks at me and says, "You are our Melchizedek's son. And your purpose in this life is to teach people the true teachings of Jesus." And I feel that here right now. I feel his presence right now. That's another thing I didn't say. About a year ago, he started pushing me to channel him, which I'm going to do on May 14th. And as an experiment, 6 people can come. You got to register. And but I would have never thought to be able to do something like that, even 2 or 3 years ago. So these things are happening, you know. As I said, what is true for one is true for all. You know, I'm a mirror for everybody. We're all mirrors to one another because here we are. By law of attraction, here we are. What brought us here? Our psychic being imprint. The resonant vibration that we all carry brings us to this place. We're not in a bar. We're not in a fundamentalist church, not in a Catholic church. We're here. There's a reason why we're here.